So the average freight agent is lucky if they survive their first 6 months. And most of them end up back at a 9 to 5 and like staring at a cubicle wall and like back in a warehouse or behind the wheel as a driver, like wondering why the sales strategies that they were taught like didn't turn into a paycheck. And they're out here, calling like 100 people a day like it's 1994, like begging for like a scrap of load while the market totally eats them alive. But like here's the thing, my man Carl didn't do any of that. Carl, you're 24, right? 24, 25.
Right.
Okay, you live in Montana, not exactly the logistics hub of the universe, right? But you found the channel. I think you found it before you graduated college. I have a video of you on the site, way down below, and you hadn't even booked one load yet with a shipper. And now here we are, 11 months later.
So I'm just about to graduate from college here. And so I stumbled across Matt's course while I was watching some YouTube videos, good old YouTube University. By the end of when I was finished with the courses, I immediately hit him up and asked him if he was making more and when they would be available, because I just wanted to learn as much as I could, as fast as I could.
And we started working together on the frameworks, and it sounds like, in 11 months, you've built now what would be year over year a $6 million book of business. You're booking 400 loads a month, which is almost 5,000 loads per year, because you didn't get lucky with like one big Fortune 500 shipper, but your portfolio is spread between multiple shippers because we found what worked for you and we just doubled down on it. And it sounds like you don't have a sales team. It sounds like you're really doing a lot of this on your own, and you landed every customer on your own with the right frameworks. And if you're sitting there, thinking the market is too soft or that you need to live in Chicago to make it, you're wrong. Like you're just using like a broken map. And today, Carl and I, basically we're going to show you like the actual math and like the actual blueprint that he used to go from zero to, absolute domination before he can even rent a car. And what Carl used is what we call the high yield velocity framework. So with the 3-part system designed to stop you from spraying and praying and start you on sniping the lanes that allow someone brand new with like a newer brokerage from standing out amongst like the big box 3PLs. And this is where most people get stuck. And so you're moving like 100 loads a week right now, and you're still bringing in new shippers. So what does your daily schedule look like just to make sure that those 100 loads don't fail while you're out hunting for the next ones?
Well, I'll tell you what, the thing about dedicated contract freight is there's not really a ton of trucks to book, right? Once you have the dedicated contract freight from the shipper, and then you have a dedicated carrier at a certain rate on a dedicated schedule, it just kind of works. I send rate cons once a week, every Monday, and then I just monitor, make sure everything gets picked up and delivered, and everything's all good. I'm pretty much just a big babysitter, making sure everything's okay.
So you're just doing a lot of like check calls throughout the day, and then doing a lot of that, I'm sure, in the morning, making sure everything went fine the day before, and then you're using the rest of your time throughout the day to prospect.
Exactly. Yeah. So like on the day to day, yeah, it's there. I mean, there's always spot opportunities, right? There one or two. My shippers email me, call me, say, hey, I'm last minute load, or hey, this broker fell off. I need you to fix it. I need you to recover. Need a repower or whatever. So that's kind of usually my morning. And but yeah, I use Trucker Tools tracking on all of my loads. It's required, or I don't book them. And so I just make sure everybody's tracking okay, everybody's happy, and then deal with my current customers and help them out the best that I can. And then I usually take about 30 minutes for lunch, and then my rest of the day is strictly prospecting.
Like in terms of importance level between 1 and 10 and the shippers that you work with, would you say like they're on the higher level in terms of requiring tracking for all of their drivers, or?
Only one of my shippers, or two, excuse me, of my shippers specifically require like breadcrumb tracking. The rest are fine with either, but it is literally on my rate con that if you do not use Trucker Tools tracking throughout the duration of the trip, there's a $200 deduct in pay. And that usually gets the point across to the dispatcher and the driver. And that and just saves me a lot of time. I can pull up all the links from the loads in the morning. Yep, everybody's tracking on time. They're not sitting in, I don't know, Oklahoma City for 24 hours when they should have just taken their 10-hour break there.
Yeah.
They're moving, and so instead of calling everybody every morning. So
yeah. Well, it's probably relieving for, I think, some people watching to like know that not every shipper requires tracking. Like, you don't have to invest in tracking, and there's also some really cheap tracking softwares out there, and I think
sure.
There's some where it's just like maybe $1 a load. So if there is a shipper who requires it, then like, yeah, you can very easily get it, even if you're a beginner. And brick one, kind of that I want to cover is called surgical prospecting, and kind of the industry tells you to buy a lead list and then just like start dialing. And in my opinion, that's kind of like a fast track to a headache and a $0 bank account. And so, from my understanding, I don't think you did that. You used, I think, what we'd call like surgical prospecting. So let's kind of look at the numbers. The standard way, which is like, call 100 times, get 2 quotes, get 0 loads, time wasted 0, 8 hours. And then you have the surgical way, which is like 50 targeted prospects, 4 quotes, and like 1 load at a $200 margin. And if you do that once a day, that's then $1,000 a week, $4,000 a month for 1 shipper, giving you 1 load per day each. And that math, it sounds great, but the reality is like sometimes you hit a snag. And so I know you've mentioned like never giving a load back to a shipper, even if you lose money. And so for the people at home terrified of losing like $500 on a shipment because they can't cover a load, can you explain kind of like the math of how a $500 loss on a Monday can maybe turn into like a $50,000 profit by the end of the year?
Of course, I just dealt with it today. I mean, the math behind it is all opportunity cost, right? You've prospected, you've gotten your shipper to know, like, and trust you, right? If they give you a load, there's some level of trust that's been established, and you worked hard to get the shipper and get the load, right? And if it's your first load, if it's your 10th load, if it's your 50th load with them, right, they want to trust you. So if you have to eat the $500 loss just to keep doing business with them, keep getting the opportunities, keep building that trust, it just compounds like crazy.
Yeah.
I've never given a load back and never will, frankly.
That's so crazy to say. Like the fact that you've probably done thousands of loads now at this point and you've never given a load back. That is wild. Brick 2 is the margin multiplier. So a bad broker would say, hey, I got a load paying $1,200, take it or leave it, carrier hangs up. The multiplier is like, hey, I see you've got a truck in Billings, every Tuesday, and I've got a consistent run that needs a reliable guy. I can't pay $2,000, but I can guarantee you $1,500 every single week, so you never have to hunt for a backhaul again. Like, do you want off the load boards? And so I know you use this. I know you were talking about it. I know you use this framework very heavily. And so why did you focus on these kinds of opportunities versus like the one-off spot quote work? Like, how did you know as like a totally new agent, like coming out of college, like realizing that this was the way? And then also like, how did you even manage to get into that type of freight, knowing that there's like these big box 3PLs that are also doing like the exact same thing?
As far as getting in, I was pretty motivated. It was your exact framework that you taught me. It was, hey, I'm not looking to replace anybody. I'm just looking to be here as a backup when somebody does fall off. Let me know what's your worst lane. What lane is always in your inbox causing you headaches? Give it to me, and it'll no longer be a problem. right? And so that's how it starts off. Yeah, I mean, and some people they're super into it, and then you can get more into the dedicated stuff. But other people they're like, cool, and I don't hear from them for 3 months, and then all of a sudden, it's a Friday at 1 o'clock, and they just had a carrier fall off, and they need somebody, and I'm the person they call, and it's kind of crazy how that works.
How are you going about finding these shippers?
Work your warm market. I mean, I don't know. Like I have a LinkedIn. I made connections in college. You know, who works at Petco? Who works at a shipper that ships 4 loads a month? You know, who works where? And just start asking. Hey, do you know anybody? Who do I talk to with a logistics related question? And work your warm market, and I can almost guarantee you can drum up something from that. Your warm market, at least in my experience, and I'm not the first to say it or the last to say it, will land you your first shipper. And from there, it's referrals. I ask all my shippers for referrals once we've done good, consistent businesses. Hey, I'm sure you network within the industry. Is there anyone else in your circle that could use a reliable guy like me? And they're happy to give it out, because on a Friday after work, they get together, might go have a beer, might go bowling, whatever. They're gonna talk about, man, this week was crazy. I could not get a truck to Dallas to save my life, and they remember those things. So when you do one person well, that news spreads and it opens new opportunities.
So it sounds like you started local. Is that was kind of like the first part of your strategy, and then you started working off of then referrals?
Yeah, so I worked my warm market, got some shippers out of that. These weren't like, I know the transportation director. This was, hey, one of my buddies used to be a dock worker at this one warehouse, and pick his brain a little bit. Hey, who usually, booked the trucks? Were they your own trucks? Were they, outside carriers? How did that kind of work? Pick their brain, and it'll lead to a lot of answers. And then, after that, then you kind of expand your search. I started one city in Montana. Now I've worked all the cities in Montana.
Nice.
Moved over to Washington. There's tons of freight in Washington. And then down to Idaho, and just kind of to expand. I know specifically you're probably wondering, but everybody struggles with Denver. Nobody likes Denver, right? It's nobody wants to go to Denver. So it pays good going in, and it sucks getting out. It's $1 a mile getting out of Denver.
Yep.
And so that was always my pitch was, I'm the Denver guy. You got stuff to Denver, I have carriers.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you stood out by looking at a difficult situation that a lot of other brokers have a challenge with, and you're like, you know what? I'm just going to be that go-to guy, and start building relationships with carriers in that area that are open to it, and then just expand from there. That's awesome. And it sounds like you were also, when you were reaching out to these shippers, you're also trying to make sure that you just found some kind of pain point right off the bat that you could work with, instead of just saying hey, I'm a local broker and I just wanted to see if you needed a quote. It sounds like you were getting a little bit more in depth than that, and a lot of that is about asking the right questions, which I know you're doing. What percentage of the time would you say you're doing you're going in person versus being on the phone, or making cold calls outbound, emailing, LinkedIn messages? How does that spread typically look on a weekly basis?
Yeah, I cold call, cold email, LinkedIn every single afternoon. I set aside a block to do it. I hear some people say, eat the frog, get it all done in the morning. But when you have freight, that freight's, in my opinion, is more important. Is, hey, got to get it covered. But sometimes the freight is dealt with by 9 a.m. and then I have the rest of the day to cold call and to prospect. And in person has been great for me. over Christmas, I went to Costco and got 30 gift baskets just with, chocolates and hot chocolate, and traveled to surrounding cities and just walked into warehouses and said, "Hey, just here visiting some customers in my area. Just wanted to drop this by. We have trucks weekly in the area, and looking forward to talking further about it. And here's my card. So it's a business card and a nice Christmas basket, and it's Merry Christmas, have a Happy New Year, and the holidays are crazy with freight, and we laugh, and I go, right. It's 2 minutes of their time, no harm, no foul, and then you're out of there onto the next shipper, just like you taught me.
So you were going in person to shippers that you hadn't spoken to yet. You were giving these gift baskets to them as opposed to just current customers.
Exactly. Yeah, I was visiting my current customers too, but they're in the same area. I'm there too. If I'm going to
Yeah.
devote a whole day to being here, I'm going to maximize my time.
Did you have any strategy with like which shippers to go to first? Or did you just go to like any manufacturer, supplier, wholesaler, distributor in the area? Was it just like a shotgun effect? You just went to anyone?
Yeah, so I have my niches, right? Like I have two flatbed customers, but the majority of my customers are reefer, right? So I'm gonna visit all of the reefer customers in that area. Am I gonna show up to U.S. Foods or Cisco and introduce myself? No, no, I'm not. Because would it hurt? No, but I'm not gonna get into Cisco using that approach, right? It's gonna be smaller smaller companies that are going to be more receptive to, that don't have a bunch of corporate red tape, that you can really stand out and make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so hard. Like I used to go to some of those guys where they had 50 loading docks, and I'm walking in all confident, like, yeah, I'm gonna win 100 loads a month from these guys. And it's like there's no way. It's especially when you're first starting out and you're just building out your new book of business. Like, leave those guys up to the massive 3PLs who are okay with like a 3% margin, because there's so many people fighting over that freight because it's such high volume that these big box 3PLs, they can handle that. They can deal with that. We want more so of the small to mid-sized, which it sounds like it's exactly what you were doing, which is awesome. And that kind of leads us into brick 3, which is like the retention loop. And it's kind of like your $6 million secret, I feel like. So, and this is kind of like the final piece. This is how a 24-year-old builds a $6 million book of business. And it sounds like you didn't find 1,000 customers. Like, you're not booking loads for like a million different people. It sounds like you found like a few great ones and used kind of what I like to call, which is like the retention loop. It takes 10 times more energy to get a new customer than to keep an old one. And this is the compound effect. So one customer shipping 5 loads a week is 260 loads a year, and at a $300 margin, that is $78,000 from one person. So how many core customers would you say actually make up your massive portfolio right now?
I'd say there's eight solid shippers.
And would you say you've gotten rid of some that maybe were super cheap, and maybe you didn't even like you didn't like the personality, they just sucked energy out of you? Like, would you say you've gotten rid of a bunch to make more time to try and find better quality ones?
I would say so. And yeah, it's gotten to the point where yeah, I've just had to say no. It's if I already run the lane, I know the market is 4,000 for the lane, and they're stuck at 3,000 because for whatever reason. No worries. I wouldn't be comfortable servicing your lane for that price. I know I couldn't do it well.
Yeah.
And it's okay to say that. And there's some companies that have super stringent requirements, and it's better to say, hey, at this point in time, I wouldn't be able to meet those requirements, but in the future, I'm working towards that. I'd love to reconnect. So
yeah, and you just need to be a guy who like does what he says he's gonna do. It's like the safe way to build a business because your income isn't tied to like a lucky break, it's tied to a system. And so, just a few last questions. I'll get kind of like the juiciest out of the way first. You're on track. You're on track this year for a $6 million in revenue year. So, what does that look like in terms of like gross profit, like your margins, and at the end of the month, are you pretty happy with like kind of what you're getting personally?
Yeah, yeah. I I thought a lot about how I wanted to build this. There's some customers where they have extremely sensitive freight and it's extremely high margin, 30-40% sometimes on the margin. There's other customers, like you said, that they might be a 3% margin customer. And, in order to be competitive, but also to provide the right service, I a 10 to 15% margin is where I'm at with my shippers. I'm not trying to put the screws to people, but I'm also trying to keep a little cheddar at home, in the
Yeah.
bank account. And yeah, I mean, not even a year in having these results, I've been super blessed and super happy with the results. But it was a grind to get here, so you gotta embrace the grind.
That question, that was for all the carriers who say that we take a 50% margin. It's not even physically possible. I don't think, not even if we tried, it wouldn't be able to work.
If you can convince a shipper to give you a 50% margin, let me know.
Yeah, let all of us know. Like we won't take them. We just want to know if it exists, because it's not possible. It may feel like it, I think, to some carriers who think they're getting gypped, and maybe some of them are somehow. But there's a lot of bad brokers out there, and I'm sure they'll penny pinch as much as possible. But for most of us, yeah, we're a lot of us are seeing around the same margins as you, like 10 to 15%. That's what I'm seeing as well. So when you were first starting and had 0 loads on the board, when you first reached out to me and you were thinking like, Matt, how do I get going on the right foot? Like what kept you from quitting when that fifth shipper in a row, fifth 500 shipper in a row, told you that they already had a primary broker that that they already loved? Like how did you overcome mentally all of that rejection?
I'd say first off, I'm a pretty competitive person. I grew up playing sports. I love sports, and and that is a pretty innate competitive nature. And I, yeah, just always had it in me to do what it takes to win. I think there was 2 things that really kept me going. Is it was just the little nuggets, right? Like between every 10 no's, there was one shipper who was saying, yeah, I have loads to Mexico that I cannot, I don't know what to do with. Can you help me with that? Or there was, super rural loads, stuff like that. There is opportunity out there. It's just not easy. And
Yeah.
the way I thought about it is, if I'm not going to do it, somebody else will.
Yeah.
And so why not me? That was always my mindset, is and still is, will always be. Why not me? Why can't I do it? Yeah, I'm not gonna let somebody else do it when I can do it perfectly fine too. And the second thing is, I'm getting married this year. Gotta, yeah.
Congrats, man.
Appreciate
That's
it.
awesome.
And yeah, I mean, gotta make it work for young fledgling family. So that's what it took.
So it was like multiple pieces of motivation that all kind of came together, and a lot of it had to do with like your long-term future. So you were just consistently thinking, even after a long day, it's 12 o'clock, you're super drained, you've been rejected 50 times earlier in the day. You're thinking like, okay, but you know what, I have to survive somehow, and I'm like mainly based off commission, so I have to do it, otherwise I have to get another job.
Right. And and freight just, it makes a lot of sense to me. And I've come to really enjoy it.
Yeah. No, it's Yeah, once you find a few consistent shippers, you do end up enjoying it. I think up until that point, it can be frustrating. It can be just like a roller coaster of emotions. You know, you get maybe a load quote from a shipper and it doesn't work out, and then you get another one and it doesn't work out, and then you get another one. You're like, oh my gosh, they actually said yes. Wait a second, what do I do? And then once you do it a few times, you're like, whoa, this is like really cool, and it's actually pretty simple. And you start looking at everything, from from when you first start, and you think, wow, like a lot of this looks so complicated. There's so much paperwork involved. But once you do it a few times, like, you get in the groove and it becomes kind of addicting. You're like, wait a second, all I need to do is just double down on what I know now works and just do it over and over again and expand my book of business from there and scale from there. And it sounds like that's exactly what you were doing. And you're still a one-man band, which is wild to me. So, and that actually kind of leads into my next question. 100 loads a week, that's a mountain of paperwork. How are you handling all the PODs and the invoicing without like totally losing your mind?
I do have an accounts receivable ARAP team. I have to, I pay them, out of my margin to use that service that my brokerage provides, and I am more than happy to do it. I'll just leave it at that.
Yep. Yeah, I would too. One of the first things I did with my brokerage was hire an operations rep to handle all the paperwork, all the admin work, so I could find more time to sell, and also for all my other agents to sell as well. Like if you want to scale, you have to take a lot of that, $15 an hour work and push it to the side as fast as you possibly can, so you can keep doing what you do best, which is sales, and what you also know you need to do in order to expand your business. So one of the last questions is customer retention. I wanted to briefly touch on that as well, because I know that has probably been one of the most important things you have had to do in the last 11 months as you build this out. How do you do that? What's your strategy?
Yeah, so first off, we kind of touched on it a little bit, but you did all this hard work to land a customer. You don't want to lose them, right? You don't want to just do one load and never work together again. So one thing that's worked for me is first off, usually we have emails going already because we're doing plenty of loads together. But it never hurts to hit them up, say, hey, I still have 3 trucks this week in Houston that I'm looking for loads for. Would you have anything for me? That's step one. And step 2 is I have to talk to them every week. I'm calling them every week. And Thursday is usually my day for that. And it's, hey, Carl at, Zebra Logistics. I just wanted to touch base. We ran this load for you guys a little bit ago, and, it went super well. I just wanted to give you a call and see, how our service has been, and, how the market is. And you can give them a little market update, and then they'll be like, yeah, we're seeing that too, or no, we're good, or man, I actually just got 3 more loads tendered in that lane, and then you move from there. So I have to talk with them. No voicemails, got to, email's fine, text is fine, but you have to talk to them somehow. You have to get them on the phone every week.
Are you just calling them out of the blue, or are you scheduling a call with them?
Just call them.
Yeah.
Call them out of the blue. You have their number. It's in their email signature. It's they're at work. Their job is to answer the phone.
Okay. And so knowing a lot of them are local, are you ever going in person and just stopping by and just saying, hey, I know you said you did that during the holidays. Are you just doing that spontaneously throughout the year and like once a month for each one of your current customers, or how does that cadence look like?
Exactly. Yeah. So for my core customers, like my core 8, there's a few of them that for the ones around me, I go see them at least once a quarter, if not more. So that's how I work that. And it's usually either an in-person office visit, or it's, hey, I'm in town, let's grab dinner kind of a thing. And that I don't just show up for, plan that out.
Yeah.
For sure. It's, hey, I'm going to be in town. You mind if I drop by the office? Just wanted to make sure our service has been up to your standards. Talk about, and you talk about that, and that leads to what other opportunities they're working on. Maybe they're getting killed going into Canada, stuff like that. Um, or hey, just so you know, produce season in NorCal is coming right up, and since we have these dedicated rates, that's not going to affect you for the first time in your career. How does that sound? And it's just conversations like that
Yeah.
that really help. It eases their mind while selling yourself, and keeps you relevant.
What percentage of the time are you, anytime you're talking to them ever, what percentage of the time are you talking about business versus like anything else, like building a relationship, building a rapport, just not talking business and just relaxing?
Honestly, at first, I'd say it's 75% whatever else, 25% business, and that goes for carriers too, right? Like my dedicated carriers, it's hey, who you rooting for in the Super Bowl? Hey, did you see that? Did you see that Matthew Stafford just won the MVP? It's stuff like that, and and that just makes it so much easier, builds the relationship, and then makes business a no brainer.
Yeah.
In my opinion, and I remember the names of their kids, or the name of their partner, or the name of their dog. It's things like that, and people appreciate that when you do remember, because when someone remembers an intimate detail about yourself, that, at least for me, and I'm sure it is for you, that's also surprising, and it makes you feel good that, hey, this person might actually care a little and remembered that small detail about me.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's a lot of the stuff that I did too. Especially with my first year, I was kind of like building and scaling super quickly. It was one of the ways that I was able to stand out. My first customer ever, and I think I got a little too lucky, like so lucky to the point where it's like weird even saying it out loud. But it was like my 30th cold call, and I talked to someone who I had already gone ahead before I called them. I was on Google Maps, and I looked up like the closest well-rated restaurant that was near their company, just to like try and find something somewhere where I think they might have been. And I was like, in the middle of the conversation, when they had already denied me, they were like, no, we don't use brokers at all. I just slipped in like, oh, you know what, I've heard really good things about this one burger spot. Like, if you had this one burger, I've heard great things about it. And all of a sudden, she, like, her energy just exploded. She was like, oh my gosh, that's a great burger. Like, how do you know about that? And all of a sudden turned into like my first customer, and it turned into a round trip lane with where I hired one guy, and he was doing 3 pickups a day every day, 5 days a week, all throughout the year. And that was because I looked up where she might have ate lunch or dinner. So it's crazy if you just think outside the box and don't do what every other broker does, and just say, and instead of saying like, hey, what's up, like, got another load, it's like you're trying to like think of other things that aren't just business related. You're actually trying to like build some kind of relationship. And I would say that's a little lucky. I wouldn't maybe use that as like your main way of getting customers by any means. It's just when I was like first starting out the business and trying new things. Well, and clearly that was one thing that worked. So I started doing that a little bit more, but I think I ended up getting a little bit more creative as it kind of went on. But it sounds like you were doing a lot of like that similar stuff. I know you mentioned in a previous conversation something about trade shows and like going to industry events. Is that a way that you found any of your current customers?
There's no better in-person opportunity than going to a trade show, in my opinion. When they're like, I went to a trade show in October, and there were literally over 1,000 shippers there. And
that is a
lined
lot of
up wanting to talk to me. It's, hey, Carl, I work at XYZ freight brokerage, Zebra, Giraffe freight brokerage, whatever. And hey, and that was my pitch. I'm the Denver guy. And do you have loads going to Denver?
Awesome.
I specialize in Denver. And they're like, oh my God, I do. Do you have capacity in McAllen, Miami, Nogales, wherever? And that definitely spurred a lot of conversations. And they're literally, folks are at tables lined up wanting to talk to you. It is their job. They're being paid to talk to you. And
It's crazy. So you set up the fact that you could find a carrier in one of the hardest places to find carriers, and that use that as a way to leverage, your kind of who you are as a brand, and and then you just built on top of that. And they're thinking, well, if he can find carriers out of Denver, well, he can probably find carriers anywhere. Like if you can find carriers out of Florida, or that are like willing to go to Florida, then I'm pretty confident that broker is going to be able to find a carrier to go anywhere.
exactly, and that's why I love that framework, is because when you start out saying, hey, I'm gonna cover your worst lanes with 100%, service and on time and XYZ, it's it's impactful. It's like, hey, this guy might be a complete joker, but let's give him a shot because nobody else can do it, or we're having a hard time with everybody else trying. Is they're more willing to give you a shot, right? Because it's a pain in their side. And like you just said, if you're able to do their worst lanes, their biggest headaches, if you're able to solve that for them, then it's, oh my goodness, thank you. Let me give you some easy lanes. Let me give you a Cali to Houston or whatever, a no-brainer lane.